Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased, and I can't say that a lot of bills that I've had to come and speak to, but I'm very pleased to rise this evening and speak to this bill. And I'm particularly pleased because I want to spend a few minutes of the time I have to praise the author of this bill, a member from Kitchener-Conestoga. His work has been exemplary on this. We were fortunate enough to co-chair an ad hoc committee that we put together on palliative care and compassionate care. And as part of that study, which he clearly was a leader on, Mr. Speaker, we were able to produce a substantive report that contained in several chapters addressing the issue of suicide and most particularly suicide prevention. And again, as I say, he was a leader on that committee. I say proudly, all parties contributed both their time and effort in the hearings that we conducted and gathering witnesses together and taking the evidence, and in fact in funding the committee, because we did it all from our parliamentary budgets outside of the regular course of events. And again, he was a stalwart in leading in all those areas. And he did it, Mr. Speaker, I want to say from I guess a core from within his own soul of the passion that needs to be drawn to this issue and the caring that one has to draw to this issue in order really to accomplish what in fact he has accomplished. And so as a result of that, we see the private member's bill in the form of C-300 that very clearly sets out a framework in which Canada can finally address this scourge on our society. I'll just quickly go over, because I do want to recognize the contents of the bill. It creates a framework for suicide prevention. It recognizes suicide as both a mental health and a public health issue. And that was interesting, Mr. Speaker, because with some of the new evidence that at least he and I learned during the course of this, that it was both a mental health issue but also a public health issue. It designates the appropriate entity within the Government of Canada to deal and assume responsibility for this program. And the program will be designed to improve public awareness, disseminate information on suicide and on suicide prevention, make statistics publicly available so we're more knowledgeable on the issue. It defines best practices for prevention, and we saw that in Canada in a number of areas, but they tended to be isolated. And finally, it will be designed, the agency will be designed in such a way as to promote collaboration and knowledge exchange within the NGO community, the health community, the provinces and the territories. Mr. Speaker, more specifically, it requires the Government of Canada to enter into negotiations with the NGOs and the provinces and territories within 100 days after it receives royal assent, the bill receives royal assent. And it's to set up an ongoing collaboration with all levels of government along with the NGOs. Finally, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the contents of the bill, within 4 years there has to be a report back, and then every 2 years after that, so that we see that in fact what progress is being made, and perhaps if there are changes that need to be made, we would address that. Mr. Speaker, in some respects, and I think he and I were both taken aback, I won't say shocked, but we were taken aback by the fact that what came out in the course of those hearings that we held was that Canada, it was in a very strange position. We had led the way, and this is a testimony to all sorts of experts we have in the country, including one from my own riding, and I want to acknowledge the work that Dr. Anton Laniers has done in the area of suicide and suicide prevention. He's a psychologist in the Windsor area, but is a recognized expert, not only in Canada, but across the globe in this area. He's worked for a number of other governments in helping them implement the program that we developed in Canada and then never implemented. We did that. We started working on this in 1993, and we developed it. It's a model for the world. All of the other G8 countries have adopted it, have implemented it, have reduced the suicide rates in their countries, and we didn't. And it's to some degree a shame that we have not. I think all levels of government assume some responsibility for that. But again, I want to repeat: the United States, England, Ireland, Scotland, Finland, Australia, and a number of other countries beyond the G8 have adopted this. I want to also acknowledge, Mr. Speaker, the work that the Canadian Association of Suicide Prevention has done. They've been, again, a stalwart for the number of years in helping develop that program. Initially, they were an integral part of it, and have continued to push to finally get it into place. I think we have to look as well, and I want to single out the province of Quebec, Mr. Speaker, because they, in fact, as a provincial government, have, I believe, I think I'm safe in saying this, have moved most extensively in implementing this national program that, again, the Canadian government was very instrumental in developing but never implementing. But in the course of their implementation over the years since they've implemented, they've actually reduced their suicide rate by 50%. And that's not unique, but it does say what happened in other countries where, again, we saw similar reduction rates in suicide. 25, 40, 50% was very, very common in all of the countries that took our program that we developed here in Canada and implemented it, and then saw a very successful response within their communities and a very substantial reduction in suicides. It also works in Canada, Mr. Speaker, because it was implemented in the province of Quebec fairly extensively. I think they still want to do more, and if this program goes into play at the federal level, in fact, they'll complete the work that they want to do. But again, a 50% reduction. We have 4,000, on an approximate basis, 4,000 suicides every year. So if we implement this across the whole of the country, we're talking on an annual basis of saving 2,000 lives. 2,000 lives, Mr. Speaker. And so the faster this bill gets gets through the process, gets final royal assent, and be implemented, the faster we'll begin to reduce these deaths in our society, which are so tragic. Obviously, not only for the victim of suicide, but their families, friends, and their community more generally. Mr. Speaker, I want to finish by, again, both congratulating and acknowledging the work of the member from Kitchener-Conestoga. You know, we need more parliamentarians like him. Thank you.